What's up, everybody? My name is Andrew Smith. I am with the Finding Inspiration Foundation, and we are a nonprofit media company, and we create films on mental health and host community events and conversations to talk about mental health, but not just to have conversation, but to also connect people to mental health resources that are in the room with us and people we've made partnerships with since we've been founded. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to Brendan Davis, another filmmaker. I'm gonna call him international, even though he's from the U.S. Because he's been all across the globe, creating films and stories. And while I was searching online for a film that could really speak to this topic of loneliness, since that's our event coming up this month on August 20th, I came across this film called The Unwinding. And it's a 25-minute short and I watched it and I was just blown away by one, it really talks to the heart of the issue of loneliness. Based on the research that I've done and the people that I've been speaking with, it really spoke to this thing of how loneliness not only affects the person going through it, but those around them. And it also does it in a way that feels very intentional. It doesn't feel overly dramatic. It feels like just a real conversation to be had. And so I have the pleasure of talking with Brendan today. And Brendan, thank you so much for being here. If you could just let us know a little bit about who you are, what you do, and we'll get going.
Andrew, thank you very much for having me. And I hope that your audience there who's just watched the film enjoyed it. And it makes me really happy that you would share it in this way. I was born and raised in and around the Southeast US mostly. I'm basically a Georgia/Alabama guy, although I did live up in the Carolinas and down in Florida for a minute, although we don't talk about Florida. But I have worked in film and TV professionally my whole life. I worked as a production sound engineer and picture editor in Atlanta. But I moved to Los Angeles in 2002 with the intention of regaining my focus from film school at Georgia State University, which was to be a writer and director. And I did that. I still worked in sound and editing for a while. But along the way, I became more of a producer in terms of, if you can do it and you're willing to do it, you'll find opportunities to do it. But I developed a big interest. I'd always had an interest in other cultures and travel when I could, and opportunities in Los Angeles to work with Chinese producers trying to collaborate between Hollywood came up that I got in the mix of. That led to me working in China, first working with China remotely, then working in China, then moving to Beijing. But the pandemic hit. I came back to California for 3 years. After that, I reunited with my then girlfriend, became my wife, Susie, who's Chinese and from China. And we knew we wanted to live in France specifically.
What was the inspiration behind it?
The Unwinding is motivated by a lot of things. The original version of the script is something that I wrote way back in 2014 when I was in LA, and I wasn't exactly where David is, but I could relate, and I originally wanted to do it. I was going to play David, and my actor friend Chris was going to play Chris, and I just wanted to do something, but I was coming out of like a bad business and personal breakup. And like I said, I wasn't where David is, but I could relate. And that idea stuck with me, although things got better, I got busy, but I always had it kind of in the back of my head. So cut to me and my wife are on a extended honeymoon reunion after being separated by 3 years by the pandemic, reunited in Paris, spent 4 months in Europe and the UK. And while we were on this, before we were going to ultimately go back to Beijing, where she's from, I was determined to make something. And I was looking through my notes folder on my phone for something else. And I realized I had a complete synopsis of that old version of the film. But then I rewrote the whole thing with additional layers where I made David the age that, in his early 70s that Kevin Michael West is, who played him so wonderfully in the short. And then the version that you've seen is really heavily informed by not only my past and looking, being very depressed and contemplating the topic that he's contemplating in the beginning of the film. But I have also had four really close friends who are all really meaningful to me in different ways, who three of them by their own hand and one of them effectively just by life choices, left us way too early. And that has been heavily on my mind. And the last of those four guys was shortly before I reunited with Susie and started this next phase of my life. And so all that was on my mind when we were getting married and otherwise having a great time. And so I put all of that into this. And additionally, I was really close to my maternal grandmother, Geneva. That's who I named my daughter after. And I remember really clearly what it was like for her to lose her agency as she got old and as she just couldn't take care of herself. And she had all the things that people do when they get old, physical issues, mental decline. And the last piece of it is that part of the pandemic I spent at one of my business partner's house, his family home up in Palo Alto, California. And he lived there helping care for his aging parents and his mother, who's amazing and was like a real lioness of a woman in her prime and in her day, incredibly accomplished and athletic and all these things. She's been dealing, at the time I was there, it was early stage dementia. And as I understand, it's gotten pretty progressed. So David doesn't have dementia in the film, to be clear. That was never my intention. A lot of people do project that onto it, and that works. With David, it's really about the same thing that led me to write the first version, which is this imaginary friend is like this reaction formation, this projection to give him a reason to keep on living, to recreate the ritual that he did with his wife with the tea and studying the flashcards and keeping his connection to that which has been lost. So that's a long answer, but it's hopefully it's all in there.
Now you it actually even answered a couple other questions that I was going to ask because something that stuck out to me was that ending. I mean, it was something that I was picking up on early on. Like even when I saw the trailer, I had imagined that Lily that's the character's name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That I had imagined that she wasn't like a real person, like she was imaginary. I had kind of picked up on it, but at the end, because it does have this like hopeful vibe, and typically when it comes to the imaginary person, it's typically seen in a negative, like, oh, something is wrong.
Right.
But
Right.
I can say, like, the way you all did it was, no, this is more hopeful than it is a negative thing. And so, if you could tell me a little more, like, where did that come from, that inspiration to make it more of a hopeful idea?
First of all, thank you for that, because I really love that that's how you took it and how you felt about it. I do have to look at that trailer again. Maybe if it's giving away too much, I think you're a filmmaker, so you're automatically running through this. I don't think a regular person is maybe going to get it, but I get that. But yeah, I'm really pleased that that's what you felt. And that's what I want people to take away from it is hope. I think, to give it full context, as I said, it started as a short, but I'd always seen a feature version of it in my head. And it's changed dramatically from the version I conceived back in Hollywood years ago. But that short is also the first act of a feature film. And where it goes from there is what happens when Chris goes inside and realizes, oh, there's no Lily. What's up with my friend? And it becomes what we call the two-hander, right? It's about David and his reality, and then Chris and the objective reality, which a lot of people will have to deal with, whether it's themselves being cared for, and they sort of maybe switch to David, but whether they're caring for somebody who's got some kind of loneliness challenge, or it is dementia or some other physical issue with aging, or someone who's dependent in some other way, somebody who's in recovery from something. but I wanted it to be optimistic, and it's hard because if you read through those comments, I know you have, but if you read through those comments on YouTube, I mean, there are so many. There are literally a couple thousand comments, and several hundred of them are just like the best thing I've ever read, and then it's times however many of those there are. And I'm happy that it seems that most people do take that it's going to be okay. And what's highlighted a lot in some people's comment is they're noticing is like, how lucky David is to have this caring friend in Chris, who, I mean, my actor Daniel Charles Doherty, Charles, who played Chris. I mean, I was standing right off camera when we shot him at the end where he goes into the apartment and is going to go upstairs, and he had it anyway, but he was just kind of confirming his take. And it was basically that it's like, you're really going to take a beat, before you ring the bell and you hear the door click open from the upstairs buzzer thing. And you're going to, you know, you're walking into the unknown here, but you commit, he commits. I told him, walk in with conviction, go
Yeah.
in with purpose and conviction, not like you're terrified of what you're going to find. Walk in like, I'm going to go to my friend. And so I think that that's how a lot of people, got that,
Yeah.
the idea of the hopefulness, hopefully. But I, just in terms of why that's the approach, I that's the story that I want to tell. And I have a lot of interests, and my other projects are not like this necessarily. And I made things that are the opposite of this in ways, but I that's really what I wanted to tell. This is probably the most raw and personal thing that I've done, and it's something that's kind of universally relatable. One result of having the film subtitled in including English like 60 languages now is I've had similar comments from people writing, from Taiwan or Indonesia or Malaysia or Saudi Arabia, or writing in their language, and I'm translating, and then I try to translate my reply to them. But I've had people saying the same things in dozens of languages. So I feel
It's
I feel
amazing.
really grateful that it's resonating with people the way it has.
Yeah, that's amazing. And like I said, it shows in the film and it shows how and how it ends. That even though he's having this moment of imagination, for lack of a better term, that it's not all like doubtful. There is some hope and inspiration there. With Chris's role, was it intentional to have, well, obviously it was intentional, but like a little bit of your process of having someone who is a caring friend who wants to be there, but maybe how I took him was he probably wants to be doing more, but doesn't want to overstep at the same time, but doesn't really, he's trying to play this fine line of being a good friend, but also giving his friend space to navigate his own challenges. What was your process in, yeah, I guess, crafting that character?
Mm-hmm.
And your inspiration behind.
I know what it's like to be the person who can't really do anything more than let the person know you're there. And I've been in the situation where, there's basically nothing anybody could say to me. It's like I have to walk what the steps I've got to walk. And then the best thing they could do is they're there if I need to talk to somebody. And, I I have that. Again, this is in the feature, but it's meant to be consistent, from the short, is that David, other than projecting Lily, he's in profound grief, but I mean, he has his mind, I again, he's not meant to be in dementia. And so Chris is dealing with his friend who he is known as something you see in the feature film version of this, but his friend was like a real intellectual and a philosopher and like a big thinker. And so Chris, as we see in the short, he's meant to convey that same level of respect. I worked out the backstory specifically with all three characters, except Lily's is a different subject. But with Chris and David, their connection, what did they do? It's never said in the short film, but David used to manage this rare bookstore, like rare and fine books, and dealing with like first editions and fancy things like this. And Chris started working there when he was fresh out of university. And now Chris manages this store. That Sears mentioned that, we used to work together till I retired is all he says in the short. But I wanted this idea that these guys have effectively a grown-up's lifetime worth of history together. And I wanted Chris to be dealing with his friend respectfully, like a capable, competent adult otherwise, but at the same time, he's clearly going through something. And so Chris has to navigate. I mean, they're as close as family, but they're not legally, technically family. So sort of what's his role? That was kind of the dynamic that I was playing there.
You as a creator, did you have a specific idea of how you wanted people to interpret the film? And if so, what would that interpretation have been?
I wanted the twist ending, which is very much a nod to The Sixth Sense. I love that kind of a device where, and I tried to overuse it. I used it in one other film years ago that you can't see. It's nowhere to be seen these days. But it's pre YouTube. But I love that device where the last scene or the last shots make you realize you've been watching a completely different movie than you thought you had. And if you liked it and were so motivated, you could re-rack it, watch it again, and you're watching a completely different movie. So I wanted something that would stick with people and make them think about the issues of the film, specifically the kinds of things David's dealing with loneliness and isolation, and this profundity of grief, and also as his friend, what his friend Chris is dealing with and what's it like to help someone. So I wanted people to reflect on what it's like to be in that situation and have empathy for people in that situation and wherever they are, whatever their position is. And the short stops before we get into this, but ultimately, David accepts, reluctantly and fighting and kicking and screaming, but he accepts help, eventually in the extended version of this. So I really, the twist ending device, it's something as a filmmaker that I enjoy doing is making people think it's one thing and then, you're actually looking at it through a different lens than you imagine. But the point of that is that people would really absorb the story and cause them to reflect on the thing even deeper was the hope.
Is there anything that I haven't asked about with regards to the film that you really want people to understand, whether it's with your process or just about the importance of talking about loneliness because of how much of especially post-COVID, how much of an issue it's become. And I think it's one of those it doesn't matter your age, race, your economics background, like it affects everyone across all facets.
It is universal and it's a killer, but it is overcomable, and everybody's journey, everybody's path is going to be different, but try to find and or retain hope. If somebody's dealing with this or related challenges, just do your best to get through it. I relate really deeply to struggles and overcoming things, and I feel like shining a light on these topics is something that's important, and I'm really grateful that the film is a understandable and accessible way into this kind of conversation, and hopefully it's relatable to a lot of people. And I hope in the case of you with the Finding Inspiration Foundation, I hope that your members and people that they touch and that this extends beyond. I hope that they're, I hope people enjoy the film, of course, but I also hope that it's something they can use. Maybe it's something they can use to start a conversation with someone. Maybe they know someone in their life that they want to talk about these sorts of things from either angle of it, but they kind of don't know how to get into that conversation or what to say. But maybe it's something that they can watch with someone that they're in that kind of a dynamic with, and that it helps. You know, that would be great. That would be worth everything.
Thank you for just speaking with us today. Um, I can't wait to show this to our audience and get their feedback and insights. And I just think it's a really great conversation opener. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And if anyone has any questions, you can feel free to, comment on the YouTube video. And there's also a contact link. It's how you found me. There's a contact link on my YouTube page. So anybody's welcome to reach out and say hi if they wish.